Good evening, everyone. It's Gordon Causey coming at you live and unscripted as always. As always, here's Candy the Wonder Pup, who already got her treat when I came home this evening, so she's not getting another one. I hope this new microphone that I'm working using works well, reasonably well. I'll check later. No one's watching right now, so I can't get any feedback. But hopefully the audio quality is a little better. I don't like the headset I was using yesterday. Brett Skinner is there, and Brett is telling me it's louder. Is it clear? Is it not distorted? Whatever. Hopefully, uh, volume is good because I know at times I don't have the after a day at work, I don't have the loudest voice. But anyway. Good evening, Danny. Oh, people are coming in. That's wonderful. Yesterday, when I was doing my live on election, on this biblical doctrine of election, in the live chat, someone mentioned Aleppo, a city in northern Syria, which has been in the news due to, I guess you would call it civil war. And man, oh man, I had to do some catching up. I know that Syria is it's a mess beyond description. And I have mentioned on my channel before the fact, and it's something that I find distressingly isn't doesn't get a lot of coverage in the mainstream. You have to go back a number of years. You have to go all the way back to the Obama administration. You have to go back to in and around 2010. Obama, you'll remember, became president in 2008 after George W. Bush. And what happened was way back then, way back in 2010, Hank Holiday is here, my friend from Texas. Danny, I know, is a Montrealer. I always say it in French. Brett, I don't know where you're from, if you don't mind sharing. I love knowing where people are from. But at any rate, all the way back in 2010, there were two competing pipeline proposals that aimed to ship or transport Syrian natural gas from Syria to Europe. And oh, that's right, Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming. There we go. We had that conversation before. I've got a great memory. It's just short. Anyway, the back 2010, there were two competing pipelines being proposed, one by the Americans to transport Syrian natural gas to Europe, and another that was a Russian proposed pipeline. And Bashir al-Assad, who is the dictator, ruler of Syria, had to decide between these two competing pipeline proposals. And what happened was Assad chose the Russian pipeline, which was going to transit the natural gas through Russia's ally, Iran, whereas the American pipeline proposed that the natural gas would transit through Turkey, a NATO country, a U.S. ally. So what happened is the Americans obviously were not happy that their pipeline proposal was rejected, and moreover that that the Russian pipeline was chosen over theirs. And so what the Obama administration did was to fund, arm, train insurgent groups in Syria to destabilize the Assad regime in hopes that it would topple and that Assad would be replaced with a new ruler who would be more friendly towards U.S. economic geopolitical interests. And so Assad, in order to maintain his hold on power, had to devote a large part of his military, security, armed forces towards suppressing that U.S.-backed insurgency. And then into the void, as Assad's fighting these U.S.-backed insurgents, then kind of in the back door, if you will, Islamic State, Daesh, came in, and they were able to establish a presence in Syria. And and that's where we got the Syrian refugee crisis that many will remember, when so many Syrians just got onto life, basically what amount to life rafts. They'd have an outboard, but they were like these big rafts that you would see divers going on when they were going scuba diving on the old Jacques Cousteau shows, and crammed with people, overladen. And a lot of times they didn't make it. They typically were sailing to the Greek islands, trying to make landfall in a European Union nation so that they could claim refugee status. And then they were, it was like the caravan coming out of Guatemala toward the northern border of Mexico in the United States, this huge caravans of people basically escaping Syria with the clothes on their back and whatever they could carry. It was a humanitarian nightmare. And I'm probably going to tick off some people. I'm probably going to, I'll say it harshly. I'm probably going to piss off some. But when Justin Trudeau allowed 25,000 Syrian refugees to come into Canada, that was one thing that Trudeau did that I actually supported. Syrians are incredibly westernized, incredibly well educated in many cases. The one thing they often lack is facility in the English language, but that can be learned. And it was such a humanitarian nightmare. And and I would invite you to watch, if you go, Samaritan's Purse, which is a Christian organization headed by Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son or grandson. And they're the ones who do the Christmas boxes that you see, shoe boxes that Christians in their church will fill with little toys for a boy or girl, and then they're distributed all around the world in developing countries, in India, in Africa, Bangladesh. I don't know exactly all the countries they distribute the boxes in, but Samaritan's Purse also does, almost like Doctors Without Borders. They were there at the islands in Greece, and as these refugees were coming off the boats, they were there to help them. And I honestly can tell you, when I watched that video, and I watched it just recently, I may even just share it. I choke up when I see this. When I see, I know that a lot of people have issues at times with large, organizations like Samaritan's Purse. But when I see the men and women who were there giving selflessly to help these people get off the boats and get on their way, I want to share this. And I didn't bring it up. I didn't have it ready. The island, one of the islands they were set up at, was an island called, inconveniently, the island of Lesbos. And if you're wondering where the term lesbian comes from, that's actually, I think it has its origins there. So I'm just going to bring up my screen, but let me read what's being said. Everyone's saying hi to each other. Danny is saying that the sound is going in and out. Is anyone else having issues? Okay, no. Kath is saying sound is fine at her end. Kath writes that I didn't support Trudeau dumping the Syrians in Kitchener-Waterloo. The influx was outrageous. There was a serious decline in our culture in our area. That's one thing. I live in a very small London, Kitchener. Our Kitchener is a large, the Kitchener Waterloo, Kitchener Cambridge Waterloo area. That's a significant, that's 350, 400,000 people in that broader area. And when immigrant populations do come in, they do tend to gravitate toward the larger centers and they bear more of the burden. I live in small town southeastern Ontario, a little town called Brighton, about an hour east of Oshawa, and little town, 13,000 people. And we did actually, the church I was attending sponsored a refugee family, a woman and her daughter. And they work in town locally now. They come to church, um, it's a tough thing. Christians, we are told to welcome the stranger. I'm with, it can't be an open door. It can't be white. There has to be vetting. There has to be security. It can't be so numerous that it overwhelms us. There's a passage in Deuteronomy about an admonition that you will be overrun. The foreigners are going to come in and take over, and that I've seen shared around at times. And so it's, again, what I talk about so often with respect to my Christian faith is this idea of tension, this idea of paradoxical. Welcome the stranger, but at the same time, maintain your identity and being in the world and not of the world and all these things. It's difficult. But let me share my screen. I'm going to show you this. And Kat saying that's based on my experience. And Aim, I appreciate you sharing your experience. I appreciate you sharing everyone different perspectives. If you disagree with me, that's great. You're not, I hate, I shouldn't use that word, too strong a word, but I don't like it when someone is all high and mighty and proclaims to know the absolute truth for all times, all seasons, all people. And we all have differing perspectives, and everyone's perspective is valid. Anyway, let me share my screen, and maybe you'll share my sentiment, maybe you won't. This is a fundraising video, so they're going to package it well, and they do. So let me just share the screen here. Large. There, it's working. So let's play this video. It's 5 minutes long. Daily, many do not survive the journey. This is on the Mediterranean, which is far bigger than Lake Ontario or even Lake Superior. And look at the little to receive them. Old, young, babies. I mean, what breaks your heart is to see the kids. I've probably been on the water for hours, maybe a day or more. I can't imagine something like this.
The majority of refugees that arrive in Greece or arrive in Europe arrive here on this island. So these beaches are where, sometimes 60 to 70 boats will land here per day. Most of them have fled countries of conflict. They left all their belongings. Some of them have left even family members behind. They just flee for their own safety, and they flee for the hope of a better life. I mean, I can't even imagine leaving everything I know and coming to a place on a little raft, and you have no idea whether you're going to be welcomed or you're going to be thrown in prison, or you're going to be, you just have no idea what to expect.
A lot of the moms are very visibly afraid, and to be handed someone else's child that's really humbling to like be responsible to care for them even for that brief moment.
Let's go, this nice lady. Let's go. Take care of her, please.
It was hard to see children coming off soaking wet. I can't imagine a mom who gets on a boat like that that's so unsafe with their 1-month-old infant, and how afraid she must have been that something would happen. And actually, I was just fearful that they're not going to make it because they're going to die of hypothermia before they get anywhere safe. So I think it just epitomizes the desperation that we see in this situation that we find ourselves in.
They know about the border crossings. They know about what's happening in Hungary, about getting tear gassed and about getting stopped at a border. They know about boats crashing out here. Just yesterday, a boat was lost out at sea and people died. You know, almost every day, one of these boats doesn't make it to shore.
That's the ocean. I know it's the Mediterranean Sea, but
You can tell they're traumatized by what has already been such a long journey that they've been through, and what will be a really long journey still.
I think when they land, they're just so glad to be on dry land and safe that the reality of what lies ahead isn't really registering. So I don't think they realize that they now have several weeks' journey trying to get through.
This is Karatepe. It's one of the refugee transit points that the refugees wait before moving on with their journey.
She's 4 months pregnant, is that right? 4 months?
Yes.
Yeah. And why is she afraid she might be losing the baby? I'm just cleaning the wound. He's trodden on a nail. It's gone quite deep. The most important thing is that he goes to a pharmacy now and gets a tetanus vaccination. She's just sprained her ankle, probably by walking or maybe when she got out of the boat. Has she felt the baby kick yet? A flutter? Then the baby's okay.
and this kids are so amazing.
We are the first faces that they see when they land. Probably a lot of them have never even met. We're happy that we can be here and be here as part of that first step, and be here to just show them that there's Christian people that love them. As they continue their journey along the way, they'll meet other people from Samaritan's Purse and other countries, and they'll remember us. I've never done anything like this. This is extremely special, what we're doing here.
Incredible. Sharing. And that's a big diversion from what I was planning to talk about tonight, but it was on my mind, that video that I saw. And I saw that probably 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was published. 9 years ago. Might have been 9 years ago that I first saw that video. Yeah, it probably was just after I moved to Brighton from Quebec City. In and around the time that Trudeau was allowing 25,000 Syrian refugees to come into this entire country. Probably at that time, we were probably 37, 38 million. Like 0.01% added to our population, not like more recently. And I'm just going to read what's being said, then I'm going to go on with talking about Aleppo and what's going on now, and about this, pipeline politics, geopolitics that's going on that is destabilizing the whole region beyond belief. I mean, forget what's happening. Everyone's been so laser focused on the situation in Israel, but the entire Middle East, this is life in the Middle East. War, and more war, absent Israel. Take Israel out of the equation, and I get the impression that a lot of people think, okay, if Israel wasn't there, there would be peace in the Middle East. And no, there would not. Yemen, 400,000 people have been killed in that country's civil war. In the Syrian civil war, going back to 2010 or 11, about 500,000 people died. There's another war raging in Sudan, which is just across the Red Sea. from Saudi Arabia on the African continent, another predominantly Islamic country, 90+% Islamic, and they've had, just in the last 14 months, about 60,000 of their people have been killed in a civil war. And these wars in Syria, the civil war in Syria, the civil war in Yemen, the civil war that just started about 14 months ago in Sudan, Israel has no play in this. No part. Pretty much 1 million people have been killed. And yet, anyway, let me read what's being said. Kind of like FEMA not helping because person supports Trump. Hank? Oh man, that was heinous, Danny, what you're writing there. How FEMA, if they saw Trump Vance signs on people's lawns, that they were denying them the federal assistance to which they're entitled as American citizens, irrespective of whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent, or who cares. Kath is writing with respect to what I had said. I agree we should help others, but we also have 4.9 million immigrants here on student visas who are supposed to return to their country but refuse to leave. Sticky wicket. And granted, Trudeau has intentionally made an absolute mockery mess of Canada's immigration system. We should be helping the needy, the poor, the indigent. We should be doing, but there's an agenda here at play. There is an agenda here that is totally in play, and I have to be so careful in how I word things. But in the Western world, we have such high expectations with respect to our quality of living, standard of living, wages, benefits, vacations, what we will tolerate from our governments. We have we set a high bar in the West, much higher than most other places in the world. And if they can backfill with individuals coming from countries where to just have running water is considered a luxury, forget getting time and a half after 40 or 44 hours, or 2 weeks paid vacation, or a national health care plan. Forget all this. Just give me running water. And often the individuals coming into this country from developing nations, quite often these are highly educated people. They're very, very capable. Often English is, if not a first language, a second language. We're talking about people who are multilingual. And so, but their expectations regarding standard of living and their willingness to push back against government oppression they're not accustomed to Western values, to our Judeo-Christian ethic. At any rate, reading on. Danny's writing that he saw reports that most of the student visas are being issued to Indian students and from India, and that's probably true. In India has a highly educated population. They want access to post-secondary education, and they want to live in places with running water, with reliable electricity, with a quality, with a higher standard of living than what India's 1.4 billion people, grossly overcrowded. 40 million across the great expanse of Canada, even if it's only the top of North America or the top of the United States, even if we're like the cream on the top of the American milk bottle, which is how it used to be described. But anyway, let's go on. Kath is echoing what Danny and Hank were discussing about FEMA on-site and withholding assistance. Yeah. Kath is saying our entire city has been inundated. I've got Brett Skinner, our friend from Wyoming, saying, hey, tell them Biden and Harris want to give them free money, free healthcare, free. Yeah. And this, when it comes to Canada, US in this respect, I think a lot of, I bet you it's pretty well mixed if you ask someone fleeing other parts of the world and looking to come to the Western world, I bet you half would choose Canada, half would choose the United States. Most would be scared away from Canada because they have this pejorative view that our weather, that we're living in igloos and having to cross-country ski everywhere we go. But anyway, but some Americans think that too. If you get down to the South, they think Canadians that we're always cold. Now we got Danny talking about the full pardon from sleepy, creepy Joe Biden. Hunter got the full pardon from his dad after he had promised on countless occasions that he would never do it, that he would respect the rule of law and respect the jury's decision. You know, the faux president of the United States. Faux, F-A-U-X, French word meaning fake. Who knows who's running the United States right now, but it's not sleepy, creepy Joe Biden. Kath is referring to that as a huge abuse of power. I think everyone would agree. Danny's writing that Donald once accidentally referred to Aleppo as Alpo. I'm sure he's not the only one. That's the one thing, it's the one thing I think that helped Trump. I think that's one of the reasons Trump is so popular, is that, he's unfiltered. He's not reading talk. He's not just repeating talking points. He's not just reading off a teleprompter. And there's no better way to describe it. I apologize for the swearing, but Trump is a shit talker. And that is preferable for a lot of people. Myself, I'd rather listen to Trump freewheel than listen to someone like Kamala Harris just go down her talking points. We can, aspire to what can be, unburdened by what has been. And, she just can't put any flesh around that saying, we can aspire for better without being unburdened. You get that? We're not unburdened by what has been. Oh, I mean, that actually was a good message if she could have articulated what its meaning. It's the heart of the Christian message. The heart of the Christian message is that you have glory in heaven with our Father, thanks to his Son, unburdening you of what you have done. She could give, but unfortunately, I do not believe Kamala Harris is a Christian. And if she was, she could have put some wonderful words around that banal platitude that she loved to share. So let me read on before I get going. So much is being... Brett Skinner, we set a high bar. I disagree. You have Biden and Trudeau. I'm not sure what you're saying there, Brett. We set a high bar. I disagree. You have Biden and Trudeau, or Trudeau, whatever. If you translate Trudeau's name to English, it's a puddle. Yeah, Trudeau. Trou in French is a hole, and eau in French is water. So in Trudeau, a water hole. Yeah, Danny wrote it out. Trudeau. He gave it very good. And Kath makes the point, and this is true, especially in Western Europe, France, Great Britain, the Netherlands. It's happening pervasively throughout Western Europe as well. Germany. This is not isolated to just Canada. This is it's a global agenda. It's not, and are we the tip of the spear? I think in some respects we are. I think, I think there are different elements to the globalist agenda. And some of those elements, Canada's the tip of the spear. Others, it's the United States. Others, it's Australia, New Zealand. Others, the Netherlands or the UK or France or Germany. Anyway, Brett writes, speaking truth to power there, Gordon, on faux president. Very good in you. Hank Holiday is writing, we are now unburdened January 20th. However, I'm starting to put in some, I think I stated my case or my opinion, my point of view fairly well. Given a choice, if the choice, and basically it was a binary choice. Don't have binary speaking here right now, but it was a binary choice for Americans. You either have to pick Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And if those are the only two choices I really realistically have, well, it's Trump every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's a no-brainer. But with that being said, I do have some misgivings about Trump. I have some misgiving. I've already stated the misgivings I have with respect to Elon Musk. He's a dicey character for me. There are aspects about him that I like and things that I don't like. I don't like Neuralink, obviously. And I don't entirely like the idea of someone unelected. We'll see how much power he has. January 20th is still a long way away. And who knows what the world is going to look like on January 20th, given what's happening in the world, given what's happening, trying this back to the situation in Syria. And you have this group now. And here's something incredibly ironic. But before, I'm just reading off the last. Brett Skinner said, we are the tip of the spear if we teach them American values and Christian values. And it would be nice if those at least had a more firm connection. If Western values were more solidly, if they were more solidly connected. I'm not saying, I appreciate this idea of the separation of church and state, but at the same time, there has to be an underlying ethos. There has to be an underlying ethic. And in the Western world, we've abandoned so much of the Judeo-Christian ethic, the ethic upon which our nations were built. Denny's asking, is Elon the equivalent of Skynet? Skynet, yes. Skynet is another one of Elon Musk's many enterprises. Laura Floyd has shown up. Amen, sister. Anyway, so getting back to Syria and the fact that, there was a pipeline proposal and the Americans wanted their pipeline, the Russians wanted their. Bashar al-Assad, dictator, ruler of Syria, chose Russia's. So the Americans backed insurgents. They backed rebel forces, armed them, trained them, funded them. And that created a mess. And that led to a decade-plus long civil war, killed 500,000 Syrians, roughly, probably more. That's the 500,000 is an estimate. And then with the help of Syria was helped by Iran and by Russia, and was able to put down the insurgency and pretty much take back control of the majority of the country. Assad was able to secure his hold on power. But now what has happened is Iran is allied with Bashar al-Assad. And Iran is also allied, obviously. They have their proxy group in Lebanon, Hezbollah. Hezbollah borders Syria, and Hezbollah operates somewhat nominally in Syria. They would help the Bashar al-Assad regime. They would be almost like a militia for him to help, put down insurgent groups. And now Hezbollah has been decimated. All their senior leadership has been wiped out by the Israelis. Exploding pager, Nasrallah, when he was in Beirut, hiding beneath a civilian complex in his old command post, got blown to smithereens by bunker buster bombs. Doing what Hezbollah and Hamas do, embedding themselves, hiding behind the civilian population. And so now Bashir al-Assad has been left without his Luca Brazzi, in a way, to use a Godfather reference. He doesn't have one of his capo regimes to help him keep Syria at bay. Sorry for the Godfather references, but I love the book. I love the movies. And so now we have a mess of a situation. And what's ironic is the group that has taken Aleppo, their name is, I have to write it down, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. That's the Arabic name. The most common acronym I'm seeing is HTS. And the United States has declared HTS, CNN even says this, as well as multiple sources, HTS, this group that has seized Aleppo and the surrounding areas, is deemed by the United States as a terrorist group. So you have a terrorist group so obviously the US does not support HTS, destabilizing another individual who they do not support. It's like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, what if it's two of your enemies attacking each other? Which side do you take? And this is where things get so incredibly complex. I'm calling it in the subject line to this video, to this live, is it's a game of whack-a-mole in the Middle East right now, in the broader Middle East. Yemen had a 10-year-long civil war. You had the Iranian-backed Houthis battling the Saudi-backed Yemeni government. And a 10-year-long civil war, 250,000 children under the age of 5 killed. No one cares because it's not on the nightly news. We got 60,000 people in Sudan, which is also in the Arab world, the Middle East. It's on the African continent, but it's just across the Red Sea from Saudi Arabia. And they've had 60,000 people killed in the last 14 months or so. And it almost makes the situation in Israel look inconsequential. The only thing is, what makes Israel such a focal point is because there are and I'm going to say it, there are Jews involved, and that there's so much hatred toward all things Jewish and toward Israel that you can kill 250,000 Yemeni children and no one cares. But if Hamas places a rocket launcher next to a school and one child dies in Gaza, that's an international war crime, and you should be dragged before the International Justice Court, or whatever it's called. You can kill hundreds of thousands of children in Sudan, in Yemen, in Syria. No one cares, but because there are no Jews involved, and that's what it comes down to. Let's see what's being written. Kath is writing Cloward Piven strategy. I'm not familiar with that term. Another thing for me to look up. Clowen or Cloward. Are you sure? Did you spell all that right? You put it in all caps. I'll look it up. Elon has said a comment that stated, "Why not enjoy religion without Christ?" Yeah, that's like, why don't you get your protein from crickets? I'm trying to think of a decent analogy, metaphor around that. I mean, Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. I'm getting bolder and bolder and bolder. And we have to be. And I know Danny's always asking for a scripture, and I have one for tonight. It's from Isaiah. I'll warn you ahead of time, Danny, if you want to get your Bible out. Isaiah chapter 17, about what may be coming in the days, weeks, months, years. Who knows? I've got Hank writing, kind of like Israel is surrounded with war. It's all around them, yes. And if you read Ezekiel 38:39, you know, and that's the one thing, and this is what makes things so tenuous. You have Turkey. Turkey is allied with the US, and they also call this HTS group a terrorist group, but at the same time, they're not friendly with the Assad regime. They kind of they're in the same situation as the US. And then you add in the Kurds to all this, and there's another can of worms, because the Kurds are kind of the forgotten people of the Middle East, in that they're a significantly large population of people. It's got to be 15, 20 million people at least in today's terms, maybe more, but they're spread out, and they're in Syria, they're in Iraq, there are even a few in Iran, and some in Turkey. And when the Sykes-Picot, when World War I ended and they were carving up all these little countries, and they said, okay, we've got the British mandate for Palestine, and that was all of present-day Israel, all of Jordan. And we'll have a British mandate for Mesopotamia, which basically is Iraq. Then we'll have a French mandate for Lebanon, and a French mandate for Syria. And then the French and the British went out and they carved out these little countries. Britain said here to the Arabians, Hashemites, they said, here, you can have you can have most of Palestine. You can have 75% of it, 3/4. Here, you can have a country. And the French said, here, we'll set up a country here for Syria and a country here for Lebanon. And Britain said, okay, and we'll set up these Emirate states, the United Arab Emirates. And they carved it up. And the Kurds got absolutely nothing. And the Turks, Erdogan, his name is spelled Erdogan, but it's not pronounced that way. It's like in the Middle East, they call the Gaza Strip, they call it Gaza. They don't pronounce a G, and you don't pronounce the G in Arabic. So I don't know how Erdogan is how they seem to say his name, the president or leader of Turkey. Erdogan is against Israel. So in that respect, he supports what Iran is trying to do in Israel, but he doesn't support Assad. And you have these shifting alliances, and it makes for an absolute mess, and things are going to get worse. And to Hank Holliday's point, kind of like Israel is surrounded with war, about the only thing that unifies a large proportion of the Arab world seems to be their hatred for Israel and Jews. And I know especially from an American perspective, Americans for a long part of their history had this kind of isolationist view. So many Americans had ancestors who came from continental Europe, from countries like Germany, and where you were conscripted into service back in the 1800s for this kingdom or that kingdom. And so many Americans have Germanic, continental European roots. And the reason they came to the United States, the reason they sailed across an ocean, was to get away from all that conflict. And that's why the American appetite to join World War I, it took a lot of propaganda to get the Americans involved. And World War II, it took the bombing of Pearl Harbor to get them involved. And Trump is somewhat popular now because he just wants peace. That's his line. We got to stop the killing, and I'll end it tomorrow. I'll end it. It never would have happened if I'd been if they hadn't inundated the electoral system with a bunch of, in my view, phony mail-in ballots that you can't verify them anyway. You can't prove that they're legitimate or illegitimate. So anyway, Trump is playing to that American isolationist sentiment of you guys, and there's a tendency to want to do that. Just say, a pox on all your houses Sudan, Yemen, Syria, Israel, Lebanon. You guys just go at it and leave us out of it. The only thing is, it's such a vitally geopolitically sensitive region of the world, and much of our standard of living in the Western world depends on access to cheap energy. If all of a sudden the Middle Eastern oil supply, a large chunk of it, or a significant chunk of it was shut off, or God forbid, all of it was shut off, energy prices would go through the roof. The Red Sea is a major Suez Canal, major shipping lane. And so, we now have to transit everything around the Horn of Africa and add weeks to travel times. The world economy now is so integrated that there are businesses in the United States, Canada, Western Europe that rely on raw materials coming from places like China. And what are we going to do? We're going to shut down shipping or extend shipping by weeks or a month or more because we have to avoid this, hostile region in the Middle East. So you can see, Laura Floyd is writing that Erdogan, it's the way I seem to recall having heard it most, hasn't chosen his side yet. Erdogan hates the Kurds. Yeah, he is afraid of a separatist Kurdish movement. And the Kurdish people kind of in that Sykes-Picot agreement, this dividing up of the Middle East, they were the big losers because their population was spread out. There are even some Kurds in Western Iran, in a mountain range. So they go from a small number in Iran, a lot in Iraq, a lot in Syria, a lot in Turkey, but they're all spread out. They're not centralized. And Erdogan is, he's afraid of an insurgency in his own country. And so, and this is where it gets so difficult. You don't support the rebel group, but you don't support the power structure that's being attacked by the rebel group. Whack-a-mole. That's what the Middle East is like right now. And it strikes me that Israel is sitting back right now somewhat pretty. They've smashed Hezbollah's capacity to, and I was one who was saying that Hezbollah, they've got, I think it was, 300,000 rockets that they could, absolutely decimate Israel. Not anymore. And now Hezbollah used to help out Bashar al-Assad. They used to help him keep his insurgency groups at bay, help tamp things down. But now, with Aleppo gone, Iran, that's part of the transit route to rearm and supply Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have to know a bit of the geography. Pull out a map. Everything's backwards to the way I represent it. East is west and west is east when I do it on the screen. It's almost like I have to flip it, and I know there's a way to do that, but I don't know how. Iran, and then Iraq, and then Syria, and then down below Syria is Lebanon, and then south of Lebanon you have Israel. And Syria as well borders on Israel. Israel, during the 1967 war, seized the Golan Heights from Syria, and Syria had used that position in 1948 and 1967 to rain down artillery and mortar fire and set up their tanks on the Golan Heights, because it's always good to have the high ground firing down into your enemy. And Israel captured the Golan Heights, and Donald Trump, for one, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. To the victor go the spoils. It's not, when the Arab world seized territory from the old British mandate, no one said illegal occupation. It was a war, and to the victor go the spoils. Anyway, let's see. Kath Wilson is writing that you don't pronounce the G in Greek either. Yeah, gyros are gyros. Evharisto. Thank you. That's Greek for thank you. Evharisto parakalo. Those are my two. And tikanis, kalaisti. I used to live in the Greek part of Toronto back in the 90s. Pape and Danforth area, for those who know Toronto. Kath Wilson writes that Canada would be in better shape if we provided our fuel to Europe when they asked, but Trudeau declined, yes, because the oil and gas sector is could be a major driver of wealth in Canada. It could be. Does Trudeau want Canadians to be wealthy? I would argue no, he does not. He's beholden to the WEF. You will own nothing and be happy agenda. Kath is writing, Trump is going to build the pipeline. I think you're talking about Keystone. I wonder if Canada will join this opportunity. I believe we will if we have different leadership in place. I cannot see Poilievre, even my misgivings about him notwithstanding, I can't see Poilievre saying no to that. And Hank, thank you, my man, is asking that everyone hit the like button. I see I have 7 already. Hey, if you haven't hit it, give me a like. I appreciate it, even if when these videos aren't the best and I'm meandering all over the place. But man, I do enjoy this, and I do enjoy you guys so much. God bless you all for showing up and engaging with me, animating me, giving me things to look up like Cloward Piven strategy. I don't know what that is. And I probably should, being ex-military, but Laura, have you read in the Bible about the destruction of Damascus? And thank you for bringing it back. I already have it open. Isaiah 17. That is what the passage I was referencing, telling Danny to, if he had his Bible, and anyone else, if you have your Bible, look it up. Isaiah 17, an oracle concerning Damascus. Damascus is the capital and largest city of Syria. It's about 400, 500 kilometers south of Aleppo. So the distance from Aleppo down to Damascus is about the same distance as driving from Toronto to Montreal, give or take. An oracle concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus will cease to be a city and will become a heap of ruins. Her cities will be deserted forever. They will be for flocks, which will lie down, and none will make them afraid. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Some have interpreted this to mean nuclear, that there will be atomic warfare centered on Damascus. I spoke to an associate pastor at the Pentecostal church here in town, Pastor Dave, and that was his interpretation. But her cities will be deserted forever. They will be for flocks. Well, if humans can't live there, I don't see how sheep, goats, cattle, flocks can be there either. Flocks of what? Cockroaches? But then my degrees in all things nuclear are like my degrees in all things medicine. I don't have them. And I know that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were eventually repopulated, Chernobyl, Fukushima, or whatever that place is in Japan as well. So most tie this in to the Ezekiel 38-39 war, Gog of Magog, this northern kingdom that God puts hooks in their mouths and draws them toward his land and his people. And as Hank pointed out, it's like war is all around Israel. And right now, Israel is more or less in a fashion, they're in the eye of the hurricane. entire storm around the Middle East. We've got civil war going on in Syria, civil war going down in the Sudan, civil war in Yemen, although the Yemeni civil war has pretty much died down, but who knows, maybe that's the next mole to stick his head up. Because at unsettled times like this, we look at what happened in the former Yugoslavia when Tito, a strongman military leader, when he died, it blew up, and tensions that had never disappeared. I mean, when it comes to the Balkans, when it comes to the Middle East, you have the divisions are linguistic, they're territorial, they're religious, they go on and on and on. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys. And Tito, as a strongman military leader, was able to kind of keep a lid on everything. But then when he died, we had the war in Yugoslavia, and it broke up into Bosnia Herzegovina, Montenegro, Serbia. All these 5 or 6 countries ended up emerging out of what had been the former Yugoslavia. So it's the same situation right now in the Middle East. We have, yes, the Middle East take out Israel and it's all Islamic, but there is Shia versus Sunni. We have the Shia majority in Iran. Most of the rest of the Middle East is Sunni, but then we have divisions between the Turks and the Kurds and the Saudis and the Egyptians. And in my estimation, there are 4 main players in the Middle East, all who have a historical claim to being, the top dog. The Persians, the old Medo-Persian Empire, Xerxes. So it's built into their DNA that we've been the top dog before. Let's be the top dog again. Saudi Arabia, likewise. The Mecca and Medina, that's the birthplace of the Islamic faith, and the Caliphate. So they want to they would like to be the top dog. The Egyptians, Nasser had this vision of pan Egyptian-led Islamicism, or however you want to frame that. He wanted to be the leader of the Islamic world. And then of course, Turkey, and the seat of the old Ottoman Empire. So you have, everyone wants to be the top dog. And the only area in which they seem to be in general agreement, especially among, I think, it depends. In terms of hatred towards Israel and all things Jewish, Iran certainly is top of mind. Turkey, I would put them second. Egypt and Saudi Arabia have more or less friendly relations with Israel, but that's at the Saudis. That's a kingdom. What are Saudi citizens friendly towards Israel? That I'm less sure of. I'm going to read up, and then we're going to end it for the night. Thanks. Kath is asking me if I have the day off tomorrow, and I do not. Hence why I'm going to be wrapping this up soon. So Laura, thank you for reminding me to get back to the biblical passage about Damascus. If anyone's checking, that's Isaiah chapter 17, starting in verse 1. And I would read it in tandem with Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. Anne Monarchy is writing, if this is a duplicate comment, I was saying hi to everyone and saying, better late than never, but it didn't seem to go through. It happens. Where are we? And you know what? I've been on Top Chat the entire time. I normally make to live chat so that I don't miss anything because anyway, reading on. Yeah, I missed a lot of the messages and I apologize. Danny writes that Trudeau is a green pansy. No kidding. Good evening. Welcome. Amen. Hank Holiday is writing something about a 2-headed sheep. That has to do with if it's nuclear war in Damascus, I'm sure. The herds that are going, the flocks, flocks of two-headed sheep after a nuclear war. Eat Me writes, you should all look into Edward Bernays and how most changes that happen in the U.S. stem from his propaganda campaigns. Okay. And then Laura Floyd makes mention of the Ring of Fire. That's how I tend to hear pro-Israeli commentators talk about it, the Ring of Fire surrounding Israel, a seven-front war, and Iran, and those who support Iran and her allies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas. They call it the axis of resistance, resisting the illegal Zionist enterprise, which I think is a crock. Yes, I got it, Hank, a nuke mutation joke. Danny is writing, what is with Israel and the two red heifers? Now we're getting into the numbers. There is and I've done videos on this because it was getting a lot of play. Back in around October 7th, when the initial attack happened on October 7th, 2023, is that you'll remember that the Hamas labeled the October 7th attack, they labeled it the Al-Aqsa flood. Al-Aqsa references the mosque on the Temple Mount. There are two structures on the Temple Mount where there's some debate, but it's widely held that the first and second temples, Solomon's temple, Herod's temple, that these two temples, the Jewish temple, either the first or the second, that they were located on the Temple Mount. And when after Muhammad died and the Saudi the Arabians came in and took over, and they renamed Jerusalem Al-Quds, I think is the name they gave it. And what they did is they built on the Temple Mount the Dome of the Rock, that gold dome we all see, and pretty much adjacent to it is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa in English means furthest. And what is claimed by the reason why the Temple Mount is the third holiest site in Islam is because in the Quran, Muhammad is said to have made a nighttime magical journey, I think on a flying donkey, I believe, and that he traveled from the nearest mosque to Al-Aqsa, to the furthest mosque. So after Muhammad died, the rulers in Al-Quds, what used to be Jerusalem, what had been renamed Al-Quds, they built a mosque and they gave it the name Al-Aqsa, the furthest mosque. And so it's become accepted in Islamic tradition that that is the mosque to which Muhammad made his mystical, magical nighttime journey. And even though that meant that Muhammad traveled through time, because he visited a mosque that hadn't been built in his lifetime. And you can check that out. It's true. Check it out from Islamic sources. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was not built until after Muhammad had died. So how did he visit it? But the way I best heard it explained is that at that time, Mecca had prestige in the Islamic world. Medina had prestige in the Islamic world. And this was a way for the rulers and the people living in Jerusalem, what had now been renamed Al-Quds, to go, look at us, we're important too. It's like when Toronto built the CN Tower. Hey, look at us, we're a world-class city. We've got a big tower. You know, little man syndrome in a way is the way I equate it. So, and I went way off. Danny was asking about the two red heifers. So what had happened is the Temple Institute, which is a government-funded, Israeli government-funded institution that's looking at rebuilding the Jewish temple and reestablishing Jewish sacrifices that haven't taken place now for nearly 2,000 years, since AD 70. So, another 40 some odd years. It'll have been 2,000 years since the temple sacrifices have taken place. However, before you can build the temple, this is what some Talmudic and Torah scholars say, before you build the temple, you have to have a cleansing. The people have to be cleansed, and the temple and the ground and everything has to be cleansed. And so in Numbers, it details a sacrifice involving a red heifer that's mixed with hyssop after it's burned in its entirety. So many other sacrifices, the two doves are cut in half. The animal is sliced in half. With the red heifer, they burn the whole thing in its entirety. Then it's mixed with hyssop and some other things, and then this is sprinkled, and it cleanses everyone. And there has to be a priest involved who has never touched a dead body or been near a dead body. And so they have to build a ramp on the Mount of Olives where this is to take place, because the Mount of Olives overlooks the Temple Mount. It's very complex, and it's very touchy, because the Islamic world sees the initiation of this red heifer ceremony as almost, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. When the reason they called it the Al-Aqsa flood is because one of the justifications for that attack was that there were Jews who were praying on the holiest site in the Judaic faith. The holiest site in Judaism is the Temple Mount, and Jews prayed on it, and that is a desecration of a sacred Islamic site. You talk about complex. Let's see. I've got Hank saying, Danny, I have a vid I can give you on that. Danny's writing that Propaganda by Edward Bernays is a great needed read. Kath Wilson is writing, you kids all have a good night and peaceful sleep. Thanks for the chat, Gordon, and I hope you have a good day tomorrow. Yeah, I've got to get some sleep. I've got to be up early tomorrow. He's writing, the cows are extinct. Well, this is the thing. They imported red heifers from the state of Texas, a fundamentalist Christian, evangelical Christian rancher in the U.S., bred these red heifers, spotless. Or they can't even have, I don't think they can have one single white hair on them or black hair. They have to be almost entirely red. I'm not 100% sure on, I think maybe they could have one white hair or something, but two, and definitely they're gone. And it has to be perfect, without blemish, can never have had a yoke on it. They cannot have calved. They're heifers. Heifer is a female cow that hasn't yet calved, hasn't had a calf. And anyway, we'll see if something happens with that. It's getting a little play now on YouTube. You're seeing some videos out there, but I think a lot of them are maybe being clickbaity. You know, it's about to happen. The third temple is going to be rebuilt, that sort of thing. It's so hard to tell nowadays. And Anna Markey writes that the sacrifices do sound a bit messy. Oh, yes. That's why you need a water source to wash away all the blood. Hank is sending out blessings to all, and as well. Blessings to you as well. And yeah, red-haired heifer, earth-colored. It's actually the Hebrew word for the color is also the Hebrew word for earth. It's a very earthy color. Anyway, you know how I like to end my videos. Thank you, everyone. Again, too many. Hey, whale oil beef actually showed up. You're always coming late, my friend. But it's because you're all the way out in the West Coast. But anyway, as I always like to say, from Numbers as well. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace. Because even as in all this craziness, all this insanity, he's in control. And we're to abide in him. And come what may, know that we're talking about sacrifices. We are covered by the blood of the Lamb. The Lamb, not a lamb. The Lamb of God. So I'll leave you there. And we'll talk to you all very soon, probably tomorrow or the next night. I don't work Wednesday. So tomorrow I don't have to worry. God bless. Night all. Oh, last thing. Hey, if you stuck around this long and you're not subscribed, I'm coming up to 1,100. I think I need 10 or 11 more. So if you want to help me get to 1,100, that would be awesome. We'll talk to you later. Now I'm ending. Good night.